I just finished up another rewatch of The Wire. GOAT. No, Sopranos is the GOAT. Big T. Hey, where my gabagool? Come. Where's my gabagool? What we're going to talk about today has to do with the fact that at the end of The Wire, there's this one scene that reminded me of something I've said about Nafany. And that was from Marla Daniels, okay? And Marla says, the tree that doesn't bend breaks, Cedric. And that reminded me of something that I've been saying about Nafany in all of these interviews. And I don't know if it was just my core memory of watching The Wire so many times. The moment where I saw an interview from Nafany where he said, we don't care what our opponents are doing. We don't even think about it. We play our own game. They don't really exist. I respect my opponent, but I don't care about them. And then what happens? They go on to lose. They crumble and they get crushed. That has been the storyline for some reason. In modern times, these Russian players, what's going on? It's these Russian players and it's Karrigan. And we'll get to that in a second. But this video is gonna be about the history of chokers. Now, another reason that I'm making this video is because I've recently accused Team Spirit of choking, and people have gotten mad at me about that. Because if you look at the games that Spirit have won, it's the vast majority. If you look at their win rates, it's very high. If you look at their performances and their overall stats on average, individually, they're all excellent. Now, that being said, if you watched Zontix play on stage at the Copenhagen Major, you remember when Chad said this.
He doesn't look like he's up for it. He doesn't look like he's up for it at all.
12 seconds.
Yeah, there's just no chance. He's out of his depths, mate.
Oh no, I mean, pick up the bomb. They're going to surely double peek you. You've got to plant. You've got to plant. Oh, not like that. 15 secure for FaZe Clan.
It's so tough to see a player get swallowed by the stage like this. It's so tough to watch. Think about all these clutch situations that he's found himself in. He's found some contributions late, sure, but in any of these situations where, needs to show a bit of shine, a bit of polish, he's just looked well out of his depths.
And you know what? To the inexperienced eye, they watch Zontix go and clear all these angles on the retake and they think, well, he looks sharp, right? He's doing what he's supposed to be doing. But to the experienced eye, you're watching Zontix clear these angles and think, his brain is off right now. He is not thinking about Counter-Strike. He's not thinking about Counter-Strike at all. He's literally thinking about, how do I not embarrass myself? How do I ignore the fact that there's 15,000 people staring back at me right now? How do I reconcile the idea that we won Katowice in such dominant fashion? Everyone thought we were going to win the major. I told myself I was going to win the major, and for some reason, I'm shaking in my shoes. That's what Zontix was thinking when he was going for this retake. And it's very powerful imagery if you know the game. And I don't even mean to gatekeep that. I would say most people understand what this means. Look at the bomb timer, look at the angles he's clearing, and then look at the player that Zontix is, right? Because if you were a bad player, then making this play is just par for the course, right? It's just, you kind of suck. But Zontix is a great player, right? The only thing that's broken Zontix is the stage. The only thing that's broken Zontix is big matches like this, right? And speaking of choking, I would love to choke myself on a pair of ACEZONEs. They're just so amazing. I just would like to put them in my mouth because I ACEZONed in my mouth, put them in my mouth. They're so delicious. They're amazing. Code launders, you get a discount. Okay, so make sure you head on over to acezone.io. They're making this YouTube channel possible in my very busy schedule between all the shit that I'm doing. I want to thank them very much. They're an awesome company. They think about CS. They're Danish, obviously, so you know that. They make the best headphones in this game. I promise you. I stake my rep on it, okay? Anyone who see me in person, if you got something to say about ACEZONE, buy a pair, let me know. They go beyond any headphones you've used. I promise you that. Back to the video. So, as I mentioned, choking is something that happens sometimes, and it's only recorded for those big games when teams who are expected to win don't pull it off. Seldom is the case that you actually see someone fess up to the fact that they choked, because it's sort of embarrassing to say that I choked, right? That I just crumbled under the pressure. You feel like pathetic almost, right? Like I was too scared to fight that guy, so I ran away. That's what it feels like to admit that you choked. Now, later we'll find out that you can admit to choking and still end up winning in the long run. And actually, the path to victory might be a little bit more long and arduous and complicated and full of obstacles mentally, but it starts with admitting. And just because you ignore it doesn't mean that you're going to be able to overcome it. So anyway, let's head back to 2013 when we saw the first choke happen. In 2013, NIP choked in the grand finals of the very first CSGO major. That's right, NIP, the team who were 87-0 on land maps won in a row. A legendary win rate, a legendary record, in fact. This was a team that was challenged by Astana Dragons, challenged by Very Games, and eventually that streak did come to an end, but they had a reputation at this point, right? They were by far and away the best team in this new game. And they were born of two very legendary players, Get Right and Forrest, coming from 1.6 and joining up with elite players from Source and Freiburg and Exist and FLAWED. And they were born of legendary 1.6 players in Get Right and Forrest, who are considered the best of all time, and Exist as well. And the two Source players that came in Freiburg and FLAWED, and they were created to be the best team to start off perfectly, just like Very Games were. But they beat out that head-to-head rival and became the best team and the most feared team and the most impossible to beat. No matter how close you got, no matter what you did, there was always something that happened. It was called Nip Magic. Check out this incredible moment from Exist where he pulls off a 1v3 and they avoid elimination at DreamHack Summer, okay? This is where Nip Magic started to become sort of synonymous with NIP in every single game they played. No matter how close you got to beating them, they pulled off rounds like this.
This is not going to happen. Team X are about to 16-11 NIP and send them home before the playoffs. They are going out of groups.
This is an undoable situation. If Team X actually manages to fail this, is gonna be a big mistake because it's for a long plant, 3 guys on long.
Oh, let's see.
Wow.
Smoke goes down though. They're gonna go in here.
Here we go.
Freiburg goes for the defuse. He has to get it right now. If not, then they lose. He goes for it. Is he gonna get it?
Oh my God!
Oh my God!
You know, looking at this round now, he put his head down and he defused the bomb. But when you were there at the time, this was just like, it was like uncanny. Like you felt like you were watching David Blaine and you knew the trick was coming and he still pulled it off anyway, right? Like, whoa, he's levitating. Like literally, it's like they could do no wrong. That's what Nip Magic was. So this is a team that's basically innominable, all right? But even NIP, who did not go on to have a history of choking, at least not like the records show, they did actually end up winning 1 out of 4 CSGO Grand Finals. But the first one that they played in, they were the heaviest favorites to win of probably any major to ever come. Okay, the very first Grand Finals, NIP were destined to be able to pull this off. And they ended up losing to Fnatic. And you guys may or may not have remembered this moment from Devil Walk as he pants himself on stage because he promised to do so if they ended up winning. This game was unbelievable to see in person because, you know, looking back, it was the very first choke that we ever witnessed. And it was the first CSGO major. So again, this is the only way that you can have a choke. The circumstances have to be so great. And it's not that NIP weren't still a great team and that they couldn't continue to be great and make deep runs and win more and eventually win their major, which was an amazing moment. But in this game, you could see clear as day, it was about the pressure. Fnatic were not even a top 8 team to be able to win the major. No one was saying the team name Fnatic in CSGO at all. Pronax was not a household name. Nobody knew about Flusha and the powers that some of these players had. As we would see moving forward, it wasn't even close. By no stretch of the imagination were Fnatic supposed to be champions of the first CSGO major. And I always pin this to the fact that this is the first time that NIP were exposed to such levels of notoriety, right? This team, NIP, had a McNip burger at McDonald's, okay? Even when Get Right goes out today in Sweden, he is the most famous man on the street, all right? You cannot walk down the street without Get Right getting hounded by people if you're in Stockholm. As a North American, we can't relate to this. When Device is in Copenhagen, everybody recognizes him. We don't have that level of celebrity for esports in North America. It's real over there. So yeah, the pressure was actually too much. It was one moment we finally saw where Nip Magic didn't come through. It was cool to watch, but it was also shocking. This was something that you couldn't replicate, and it had to be Nip beating themselves. Moving forward just a year, you have something bubbling up, okay? And that's Device, Dupree, and that's Zipix. And they're playing on this team together on Dignitas in 2014. And this team is good, right? And they're led by Fetish, and even me as a spectator back then, you know, I kind of knew about them. I didn't really think of them as like they're going to win an event, but they started making deep runs, and we already saw very early on that Device is one of the best players in the world. 2014, 2015, you've got Device who's playing on Dignitas, and he goes over, switches jerseys into TSM, switches jerseys into Astralis, all the while is playing amazing, okay? Now I want to say that Device is having great stats versus a lot of his competition, even in these early years. Choking again is sometimes something that goes beyond the stats. When you look at Device's stats, they were great. But look at him. openly joking about the fact that he was choking while he was playing with Fetish, you know, after he had to take the op from Fetish because Fetish wasn't a good enough opper, and then he went from a star rifler to the opper. Or when Karrigan came on the team and they formed Astralis together and they really tried to stamp the mark of Denmark on Counter-Strike early on. Now, Astralis also, though, had a choking problem. And a lot of this, of course, we're talking about the GOAT choker here. We're talking about the Glizzy Gobbler, okay? We're talking about the Grapefruit Challenge champion, okay? Karrigan, baby. This guy has had the most amazing chokes of anybody, all right? And I can say that laughing because he's obviously also had such incredible career wins. He's got the trophy sliding bar. He's played and called for most of the best talent in the entire game's history. He's also developed so much talent. He's won so much with stand-ins and everything, but he's also given away 2 majors to teams that we would now consider flukes. And when this happened to Cloud9, I'm gonna be honest with you, I was mad when this was called a fluke. But if you look at the definition of a fluke, this is Cloud9, who went on to not win anything. They were top 6 coming into Boston. They played against FaZe in the grand finals, and FaZe were the #1 team in the world. It was FaZe with Olaf. It was FaZe with Guardian. It was FaZe with Nico and Karrigan. And there was just no chance that they could lose this to Cloud9. No chance. And I even talked to Stewie after the game in person. And I remember Stewie saying, I think they choked. And I said, nah, you just destroyed them. You know, I think it was both, to be fair. They did beat 3 top 5 teams on their run. Oh my God, here's Launders. How can I talk about this run without trying to make Cloud9 look good? It was a legit run, okay? It was actually, in fact, the hardest run in history. But anyways, when you watch Karrigan get up on stage for the grand finals and play against Cloud9, you see Nico in the Jumbotron after that game is over when they were up 15-11 on Inferno and went to double OT and lost. And you see the confetti on him with his hand like this on the back of the chair, and you see that 1,000-mile stare, and you see what happened with Karrigan getting cut after that moment. And you see Karrigan up on stage at PGL Copenhagen, once again getting completely decimated by a team that he was much higher ranked than. Karrigan in both instances choked. And if you want to debate that, you're allowed to. I just find it hard to believe that anybody would deny it. For Karrigan or Nico or anybody on this team in 2018 to deny that they choked would be to say that they were somehow the worst team. You know, who was better on that day, obviously. When a team chokes, they run into time pressure. They can't hold their gun anymore. They can't hit the headshot. They get the spray. They get 60 damage. They're a little sort of the rotation that they know like the back of their hand. They're late to the site. They get smoked out. They don't want to get information because they're scared of being aggressive. They're reframing everything in their head. They're teaching themselves the same things that they already know how to do live. They're spending moments in a live match as professional players on the top ranked teams in the world, retelling themselves how to swing, how to spray, how to be confident. That's choking. And that's what we saw in both of those cases with Karrigan. And this is the same reason that he got cut from Astralis early on. And when Glaive came in, of course, he took a team that made sense. And the one thing they were missing was the ability to have clutch calls. And at Atlanta 2017, the other major I love talking about, 7-12 comeback. This was the comeback that Karrigan was incapable of thinking about trying to call for Astralis in their toughest moments. When it came to Karrigan later on in Antwerp 2022, I'll never forget this fucking round in Library with the silenced M4, holding the arch cross, getting his 3 kills. Karrigan overcoming choking when it mattered the fucking most in 2022. It was such a beautiful moment, okay? It was truly amazing watching somebody like that overcome, some could say, the hardest challenge in the entire game. Being your best self on the big stage in the grand final versus a tier 1 team in front of a massive crowd. That was Karrigan in Antwerp grand finals. Then what fucking happened after that? PGL Copenhagen versus Na'Vi. This could be 3 majors for Karrigan, and who knows the timeline if he stays on FaZe because he doesn't get caught because he doesn't have the nerfs. What kind of CS history we'd have. So what are some other examples? And I mean, the reason that I brought up this quote to kick things off, the tree that doesn't bend breaks. Nafany, man. Coming out of 2020, and a lot of the teams who were coming out of 2020, Big was the #1 team in the world. Fury was the #1 team in North America. It was Cloud9. It was Heroic. These were the top 5 teams, you know, coming out of 2020, not playing in their LAN matches. But then we get on stage and we see Heroic lose to Outsiders in the Rio Grand Finals. But more importantly, we see Cloud9, who should have won this damn major, right? They should have been in the Grand Finals of this major. They lost to Dexter's Mouse Do you remember this? And I think overall, Shiro was one of the only rays of sunshine when it came to Cloud9 back then and some of these runs and some of their choke games. But even Shiro had one or two moments where he obviously completely disappeared. When we talk about him playing in Antwerp versus Imperial, obviously, amazing game by Fallen, okay? The Professor. Insane overpass match. One of the best maps ever played at a major for qualification to get to top 8. Amazing stuff from Imperial. But let's face facts. Look at map 2 and 3. Remember Mirage, Shiro, everyone on this team getting absolutely decimated. Most of this is definitely Nafany, right? We know that the quality of players is there, but you could see it right from the interviews, okay? And this is something different with Nafany compared to some of our previous examples. So I think Nafany and that Cloud9 had an excellent system. But when I hear Nafany have interviews like this...
In terms of vitality today, what do you think of where they are at? Because they've started to improve their map pool, their performances look better as a team. Do you feel like you can match them if that whole team lot comes up in like the full performance?
I mean, Vitality, it's a good team, and all what I can hope that we will show the good game, both of us, and then we will see who is better, that's it.
You know what's coming next. You know that they're either going to destroy their opponents or they're going to fall apart and they're just going to freeze. You know that that's coming. The branch that doesn't bend breaks. That's Nafany. And I kept saying that. A player with a great system and a great team and a great composition and achieved amazing things out of 2020. But when it came to those very few games that were very important, you could still see the choke. You had to watch the game though, because when you go back and look at the stats, they'll always lie to you. When it comes to individuals as well, we've got Simple, who 3 out of the 4 major finals he played in, he was terrible. Didn't do anything. Was the Face It major supposed to be his time? Completely crumbled. When it came to Liquid in his grand final, they let that massive comeback happened. He got a bunch of kills and then just stopped and then they lost. Fell apart. That's our GOAT, you know? Counter-Strike doesn't have a Michael Jordan. We've had very flawed GOATs, okay? We got Zaiwu, who's the master of stats, but he's even having problems in grand finals right now. His playoff stats, excellent. The fact that he's won a major, done. But the fact the quality of the run isn't there. The fact that when he plays against the top team in the matchup that matters the most in the elimination game, even if it's only the very final map at Dallas, where is he when you need him? It's only these few games where you see the choke happen. You have even players like Stavn, who had amazing statistics. He was the best player statistically for Heroic. When it came to their important games, their elimination matches and playoffs for Heroic, he was one of the biggest land drop-offs in terms of rating. 0.10 to 0.15 down, quietly going missing, right? It's very quiet when this happens. You still see the player that you've noticed 90% of the time. They slightly miss a spray here and there. Critical rounds. You don't get many chances to be great. I think that's basically the point of this. Again, we're only scrutinizing teams and players who are expected to win entire events. And so when you criticize them, it just goes to show you that the very few champions that we have, I want to say like Stewie and Glaive, who have done an incredible job of closing out, winning, got the trophies already. Even if they become washed afterwards, you got to respect the fact that they've done that. You know what I mean? Because lots of people get close. Lots of people look extremely promising. Even someone like Donk looks like we're going to get 10 years of him at the top level, and maybe we will. Maybe we really will. But at the same time, it could be a Kirby and we only get one. Maybe we don't get any and they disappear entirely and we never see it. It could be. So this is the final boss for many great stories in Counter-Strike, and I think it's a really interesting thing to look at. And when it comes to Spirit these days, they're the final team in this video that I wanted to talk about, because they're the team in these interviews where, I mean, these guys are going to die of irony poisoning if they keep doing interviews like this, where they just keep joshing around, pretending like they don't give a shit, and then completely crumbling under the lights. All right, I don't want to see a team like this make a roster move because they're scapegoating their worst player like Cloud9 did with Inters. I don't want to see this team pretend that they can ignore a problem until it solves itself. I want to see them doing this and joking about choking and then getting up on stage and being the team that they know they can be, because they can be great. Spirit have the composition to be the best team in the world. They have Shiro and Donk. They have Chomper, who's been waiting for this chance. They have Zontix, who has so much future potential. They need to get their mental right, and they need to stop following in Nafany's footsteps, okay? And everybody needs to learn from the chokers in history to understand what their fate is going to be if they keep pretending that they're better than that. Because being nervous only means that you care. It doesn't mean that you're a coward. It doesn't mean that you're weak. It means that you want it If you aren't nervous, you don't want it. And the great players that win are never afraid to say that they want it. So if you want to be a champion and you want to be great, don't be afraid to say that you want it. You know, when Glaive cries after beating Astralis, after so long of being criticized and coming up with a team that's basically as a ragtag group of guys, he's comfortable to say that this shit meant a lot to him. And then he did it and he won. And that's what a champion is always going to be. Not the guy who pretends this shit is silly and I don't care. And obviously for Karrigan, the GOAT choker, again, I say that in jest slightly because he's also won a ton. And another reason that I wanted to make this video is because Karrigan is this poignant example of somebody who has achieved so much, but shows us also that the job is never finished until the day that you resign, right? When he wins Antwerp and he gets this hold on Library at the very end of the game on Inferno versus Na'Vi and wins his major, you think it's over. He'll never choke again. And then when you see Copenhagen, you see the 7 grand finals that he didn't get first place in, you remember the job is never finished. You continue to be human. You have to try hard every single day and you have to keep overcoming. And that's the scary part about Karrigan. It's also the beautiful part for the people who have achieved so much over such a long period of time in our long history at this point. I'll say it, we have a long history in CS. And Karrigan is that very human reminder that the work is done when you quit. And so we'll have to see what happens next for him because he is so close to being simply the GOAT across all games. Maybe he already is, honestly, with his average consistency. So this is a few examples over many years of Counter-Strike to talk about choking in Counter-Strike. And it's obviously a very interesting topic. If you've got teams, obviously there's many more stories of choke. I didn't even mention Liquid. I didn't even mention G2 not winning maps in grand finals. I didn't even mention Alexi, you know, finally overcoming that. If you've got examples of chokers that I didn't talk about, or you dispute any of the chokers that I brought up, I would love to talk about it because this is a discussion that goes beyond stats. It's only for the people that were there watching the games. And I know that you guys have watched some of those games. So let me know. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.